Now, hundreds of families across the UK are going to take part in some government trials. This is testing whether social media bans, time limits, and overnight curfews can improve children's sleep, their well-being, and their schoolwork. And it's part of a wider consultation to try to find out whether restrictions really work. Well, let's talk to Jennifer Powers, who's the director of the Unplugged Coalition. That's a campaign group advocating for a smartphone-free childhood. Morning, Jennifer.
Good morning.
What do you think then? Does this sound like a good solid way of researching the impact that limiting at least phone use can perhaps have on children?
Well, I welcome the government's newfound interest in this huge issue that's impacting so many families across the country. But I'm a bit perplexed by the research, by the pilot, because surely we know by now that social media has a negative impact on children in a whole range of ways, whether that be shortening their attention span, poor mental health, cyberbullying, the consumption of really harmful, violent pornographic content. So I'm a bit perplexed as to why they want to do this sort of research on half gestures like curfews and time limits. Parents can already, if they're so inclined, seek to limit the amount of time or the times of the day when their child can access their smartphone or their tablet. So I'm a bit disappointed that the government isn't just looking to go full steam ahead and help protect children.
Right. So presumably you think that the research is already out there behind what you and many others already think about mobile phones.
Absolutely. There's a strong and growing body of evidence. And, we could go through different studies, but I think your listeners will just know it from their own eyes. I mean, when we go down the street and we see a group of teens together at a bus stop, and yet they're all looking at their phones as opposed to speaking to one another and laughing. And it's really interesting. I spoke to a secondary head the other day, and I was talking, they brought in a more strict smartphone policy for their school, where smartphones are not allowed on the grounds at all. And I asked her, what was the first impact, not the biggest impact, but what was the first impact that you noticed from this new, really robust policy? And he said, first thing he noticed was laughter, because the children were actually chatting and talking and having fun and laughing. And I just think that's really poignant. And so, yes, I welcome the government taking this issue more seriously. I'm glad there's a consultation out, and this research, this pilot is part of that consultation process. But I'm a bit concerned about the way they're framing the research and the broader consultation, because they're looking at these half measures, these almost window dressing gestures, as opposed to just getting on with it.
Well, I suppose they might argue they're not here to do so, but and others listening might suggest this too, that this is a more realistic way of looking at it, to accept that this will be a part of many, certainly teenagers' lives and the way that they live their lives. So by examining a halfway house, if you like, if looking at whether just limiting that use and making it more targeted might still improve things like their sleep and their general well-being, or their dedication to their homework.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know that the impacts of social media and smartphone use on children are dose relational. So the more they consume, the worse it is for them on average. So I do take that point, but we don't say, oh, well, we know heroin and crack cocaine are bad for children, so let's just limit it to daytime and not nighttime. Or if they could just do, maybe smaller hits. I mean, if something is, as we know from the evidence and we know from our own eyes, if something is this addictive by design, then why are we going for these half measures? Surely we all have an obligation to band together and take this very modest step, in my view, which is the Nash Amendment, which is back in the House of Lords today, actually, as part of the Children's Welfare in Schools bill, that's actually calling for an Australian-style restriction. So I would just say let's go the whole way. It's just one modest step that will help the overall picture. It doesn't mean parents still can't set time limits. But I just think we have to be ambitious for all children in Scotland.
Just quickly, Jennifer, though, what
Yeah.
about this argument that ban it completely, it goes underground and people there is no control whatsoever, and they will seek that out?
I've heard this argument, and it perplexes me greatly because we don't say, well, we need to make alcohol readily available for 5-year-olds or 12-year-olds, because if we don't, they're going to go do crack. We just don't make that argument anywhere else. So,
it's all or nothing in your mind.
Nothing. I think this is one modest step to restrict social media accounts for under 16s. But I just think, we intervene in setting rules for kids all the time, right? We no longer let children go down mines or up chimneys. We don't say they can just go up on Tuesdays, right? We as society evolves, we set rules all the time about what's safe for children. And I guess the case I'm trying to make is these platforms, these devices are addictive by design, in which case I think it's a very modest, reasonable step to go forward and get them out of our schools, to restrict them social media for under 16s. And so I hope the government will ultimately come to that conclusion.
Jennifer, thank you. Jennifer Powers, Director of the Unplugged Coalition. Connie is speaking about this after 9 o'clock on the phone in. I'm sure you will all have something to say about it, so get in touch with her. 80295 is the text number.
Jennifer Powers with a powerful argument. 80295 is a number you guys have been wearing out this morning.